Transmitting to you from Old Heart Radio.
Prepare to have your bones chilled and your hairs raised. It's the WacArnold's Brothers Podcast.
Welcome home.
Recording in progress.
So, I just want to say really quick, because people are probably wondering, why they didn't get an episode this last weekend. I'm throwing you under the bus.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good.
No, it's that time of year.
When life happens, man. And yeah, like in between, I'd say like in between dealing with like work and just stress and school, like my body just fucking had a cave-in moment this last week where it was just like,
so it happens.
This is still episode 30.
Yeah.
Yeah,
doing
man.
things a little different, just to kind of give a little explanation. So we feel like every now and then, we're going to do a special episode, and, eventually we're going to talk about, the decade of the 80s and the 90s and yada, yada. But, we figured we start with the 70s. We could have started earlier, but I feel like the 70s is when, especially like mid 70s and on, is where horror starts getting like really popular, and there's some big horror names. I mean, because there's obviously, before then there's a lot of good. I'm not saying horror started in the 70s by any means, but I'd say that's when it really starts gaining steam and popularity.
Fair enough.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like in the 70s, especially like when, going through and trying to like pick out these, some movies to talk about, you realize how much happened in the 70s in terms of horror movies. And yeah, you're right, like 100%. Like it's not like the 70s was like the beginning of horror, but I think in terms of what we think of as modern horror, like that's a really good starting point because you have some like breakout directors, you have some like kind of themes that really start like populating the next decades,
True.
But
and
yeah,
I think and that's a good point, how you just said themes that populate the next decade, because in the early like first couple years of the 70s, there's a lot of movies that are just like vampire this, vampire that, like branching off of what was popular in horror before, you know what I mean? And then in the late 70s, that's when like, we're going to talk about Halloween, obviously, but first shout out Black Christmas in 1974. Those are like two of the earliest quote unquote slasher movies that, helped the boon of the 80s, which was like the fucking slasher decade. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And also Black Christmas it might be one that we cover here upcoming, because I thought it'd be fun to talk about that movie.
It's a classic. But
you're right. It's like it bleeds like things from the 70s. I mean, just like things from the 60s and before bled into the 70s. There was just this moment where I think whatever was happening in terms of like the directors and the writers and even acting, it sort of just like had this like moment where it just all blended together with these influences and where things were like heading in terms of like future direction. And it just fucking like, I don't know, there's just something magical about the 70s, the 70s horror. I mean, just like the 80s as well, but I think the 80s was a different beast, but the 70s, they really started playing with lots of different things. You had one of the movies that I want to talk about, I'll just jump into it, Carrie.
Okay, so real quick, I just want to point out that to the viewers, obviously we're not going to mention or talk about every single movie made in the 70s. We like kind of like our plan is we each have a couple of movies we selected that we're talking about, and then along the way we're going to talk about some shout outs. But get started with what you were going to say.
I wanted to jump into Carrie because one of the things that it talking about the 70s and stuff, it reminds me of Carrie came out in 1976, so it's on the latter half of the 70s, but it's the first film adaptation of a Stephen King work, and that became.
Well, it's also his first novel too.
Yeah, and that became this resource to pull from in the future, because mostly because I think you see the success of how Carrie hit with fans. Totally. I mean, it was
it's a De Palma classic.
De Palma. It's just, I mean, it gives there's a young John Travolta in there. Missy Spacek in the title role, of course, but
and Piper Laurie's in there too. She's done a lot of horror.
Dude.
The young John Travolta. Yeah. I just love it when he gets iced,
dude. I was thinking when I was thinking about this movie, it reminds me of how with Spider-Man, Stan Lee and them, he creates Spider-Man to have this branch between to the teenage readers and the young audience, where it's you'll feel the struggles he goes through. Mm-hmm. Carrie's the horror movie equivalent of that in a lot of ways. Where it's she's the brunt end of jokes and shit at school. She has a really awful home life, very awful, we'll say. With her mom being just this overbearing, intense, Christian lady who, at times locks her in a fucking closet and shit. It's just, it's just it's fucking gnarly. But anyway, I think in a lot of ways this the novel, the movie, it does a really good job of connecting people with that high school, what it was like when they were in high school, or if they were going through high school at the time.
It's very true.
And you can even if you were bullied at all, you can look back and kind of reflect and connect a little bit. And that's when the big moment in this movie where Carrie's psychic powers kind of have this culmination. She's covered in fucking pig blood, and she's which is just one of the most mind-blowing sequences.
It's also obviously one of the most iconic scenes in horror in general,
and one of the most iconic images in horror, dude. Her just standing there, I mean, and you're right.
It's amazing.
You're right. It became kind of a trope in a lot of ways, where it was okay, there's somebody's gonna pull a prank on this this person who thinks that they're popular now, and but yeah, dude, that whole sequence is just like I said, if you felt bullied, you can connect with that, because that was just when she gets her revenge with which also is interesting, because you get the sense that in this movie, Carrie, who you become extremely sympathetic for, when she's enacting her psychic vengeance on the fucking gymnasium full of formally dressed high schoolers and shit, you almost get a sense that she wants to do that, but also isn't, it's not in her character to do
right
and
it's
so
a good
it's
point.
this really great conflicting moment, and I think that's one of the things that this movie just does so well, is it humanizes so much, but then it gives you this epic tail end of where
it's true.
Oh, I love it.
I like what you said, how people can relate with that, and if you've been bullied, you can live vicariously through this character to imagine what it would be like to get your revenge on those people that bullied you.
Yeah,
having that connection. I know we make a lot of weird wrestling reference, but that totally reminds me of in the 80s when how people could relate to Stone Cold, where he's telling his boss to fuck off and do all these things that you wish
right
you
up in
done.
Vince McMahon's face with his middle fingers,
giving whooping your boss's ass, you know what I mean? It's just stuff like that people can really get into, you know what I mean?
Yeah, dude, it's that unleashing of that stuff that society makes you keep at bay, where when you do, you just want to fucking I
will say this too. The thing about Carrie is it was a great movie and it was successful. But here's a question for you that I didn't think about until now, because you mentioned it was the first King work. What if it would have just been awful and bombed. Like, I wonder if that would have had any effect on further adaptations. Like, I wonder if people would have been more hesitant. You know what I mean? Like, you don't think about stuff like that.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I really do think that we would have seen. I mean, it definitely would have impacted like the screen adaptations of any of his work. It probably would have impacted him as a writer. You know what I mean? Like, if his name was attached to this and it bombed because it didn't it didn't transfer from one format to the next in a great way. It would we might not even have the Stephen King that we know today. You know, and
you never know. Because now,
yeah.
He got to a point where if there was a shitty adaptation, like, it didn't matter. Like, it was just like, well, you know. But yeah, if it's your first one and it doesn't translate well, like, I wonder.
Yeah,
I guess it's a what if, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like, you know, it could potentially kill the steam on your name, and that's sort of what King has become in his life. I mean, not to discredit any of his work. Stephen King has a plethora of. I mean, everybody knows that, but like, you know, Stephen King is like almost a fucking brand itself.
Right.
But yeah, I just picked this. I picked this movie because, you know, like I said, I can really connect with this movie. It's a sweet adaptation, which I thought was a cool reference, because some other ones down the line are adaptations I love too, and I just like, you know, I don't know, I just didn't realize, I guess, when looking into it, this was the first one out of any of his work, but it being from his first novel makes sense. But yeah, it was like you said, it was wildly successful. They made it for like 1.8 million and made 33 on it. So,
damn.
You know, they definitely made it back. And to this day, Carrie is always being re-released in different, you know, formats.
True.
You know, like, I have a fucking little framed iconic poster of, like, you know, that just like her headshot of, you know, covered in blood and stuff. Yeah. It's just, you get so much great imagery from this movie. But yeah, I don't know.
So before I talk about my first pick, I want to do shout outs to a couple good Italian horror movies that came out in the 70s. So 1970, we get Dario Argento's directorial debut, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, which, you know, it's a good movie. For his first movie, I feel like there's a lot of things that he would go on to be like staples of his work.
Okay.
So 1971, we have Mario Bava's A Bay of Blood, which is a fantastic movie. 1972, I just watched this movie for the first time recently. Lucio Fulci's Don't Torture a Duckling. It's great. Go watch it if you've never seen it.
Oh, dude, I have not.
1975, another Argento movie with one of the most iconic doll scenes you'll ever see, Deep Red, which is a lot of people, that's like their favorite Argento movie, and I can understand why. But the one I wanted to talk about, and this is going to seem obvious to people, if we're talking about 70s horror movies, like Suspiria, which is the first, like, probably the biggest Argento movie that if you say his name, people are going to instantly, you know, it's not my favorite. I've mentioned multiple times. And when we do the 80s, I'm going to talk about it again in extent.
Yes.
Phenomena is my favorite, which it might be like a hot take. But Suspiria is a 1977 horror classic, in my opinion.
Well, I agree. You can't talk about 70s horror movies and not bring it up. You know what I mean? Because it's like, it's an iconic movie. I think it, you know, you mentioned some, you know, his, you know, some of his earlier movies, you see bits of like Argento. And I think he's one of those directors that along the way, you kind of see him really develop his style of storytelling. And that's what makes his, like, some of his like later works really fucking awesome. You know, but with Suspiria, one of the things I always loved, dude, was that he uses music so well to tell the story, to move the story along. You know, but
he always has great fucking music, dude.
I know, that's one of the things I have always loved about.
Has great music, like.
I've always loved about his work is that he includes that fucking like he doesn't short you on the soundtrack. Like,
no, not at all. He probably was some of the best. Like, and a lot of it was Goblin. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
Which anyway, so to the uninitiated, Suspiria is so Argento also had a 3 group of movies which is called like the Animal Trilogy, but Suspiria is the first of the Mother of Tears trilogy, because he goes on to do Inferno, which is great.
Yeah.
And then in 2007 he did the 3rd one, which I've actually never seen, but I haven't seen a lot of his later work because I don't know. But anyway, Suspiria is essentially, you know, this haunting story of this ballet dancer who goes and slowly finds out that the ballet school she's at is like a coven of witches. And along the way, there's some amazing lighting, some top-notch cinematography, and some brutal fucking deaths that are just leave you like, holy shit.
Yeah, man.
Like, especially Sarah's death, like, where she's running through and stumbles into a fucking room full of fucking razor wire. That is one of the coolest death scenes ever.
Dude, it's so rad. And like, I guarantee you that's like you can draw a line from that scene to some fucking Saw movie. You know what I mean? Like,
no shit.
It's such a fucking like, I don't know, just like you're just, when you're watching it, you're just like, whoa, it's just, I don't know, gnarly. It gets under your skin. You're right, dude. Some of the deaths in that movie are fucking awesome. Like right from the gate, from the movie, you know, a couple minutes in with Pat's death, who's just like this character you see really quickly at the beginning. That whole first scene with her, and that really, like, I just love the way his movies look, because that, wherever they filmed that first scene in that like apartment complex where her friend is, like, it's just the most unique, visually stunning shit you'll ever see. And from those first deaths sets the tone for what's to come in this movie. And it's just, you know, dude, I agree, man.
It's iconic. It's a great movie.
Yeah. And you know, you mentioned the lighting and stuff that he uses. It really makes like visually this movie like pop. Like like his use of color, his use of just like, you know, like dark and like bright, like I don't know, it's one of those, like, as soon as you start watching it, it captures your attention by just the way it looks. And then, you know, the music kicks in, and then, like you mentioned, like couple minutes in, you get your first fucking like epic death, and you're just like, where's this movie going? And so you're just along for that fucking ride. And I remember the first time I watched it, man, like it unfolds and you're just like, what the fuck is like, I when I learned it was part of that like trilogy too, like that made me seek out Inferno later on, because I like, for sure. And
I love it.
I love
it.
Oh
man. Inferno is amazing.
Yeah. So, but and you know, if anybody listening has never watched Suspiria, I definitely encourage them to check it out though, because it's like it's one that, like, for me, I could watch and rewatch most times. Totally. You know, and like that can go for a lot of Argento movies, like
of course.
But it also has you know, again, like kind of like that kind of iconic, I would say, like there's like that the cover is what I'm talking about, like that iconic like movie poster in the cover. Like that's one that, like, man, it's just, I don't know, I want to get it like framed or something and just like have it on the fucking wall, because it's just so, I don't know, it's simple but effective. Yeah, man. I would say, like, I've been, oh man, I don't know which movie out of the trilogy is my favorite though. That's the question. I probably would need to have to rewatch them all just to like make a firm opinion. Fair. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like really kind of like, you know, groundbreaking stuff that sort of happened during this decade. I would say like I say Suspiria was like Argento really reaching like a peak, not a peak, but like like a moment where he perfectly knew his vision.
Yes.
And like that, like I said, like kind of propelled future projects, I think.
Totally.
You see some, other, I want to bring up 1974's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because that really brought something to the fucking table when it came to horror, dude.
Of course. I mean,
where did Toby Hooper fucking come from?
Right.
Like this, like if Suspiria is a beautiful, like amazing masterpiece of a horror movie, Texas Chainsaw it's not I'm not saying it's not a masterpiece. It is just like this. It's a rough fucking movie.
It is.
You know what I mean? It's like on the other end of that spectrum, where they give you the grit and they make it look gritty, and they
Yeah, you hear stories about like the filming of that movie and how fucking awful it was. Like,
yeah, dude. like I'm grateful for the product. I'm grateful to also not have been part of production.
Because that's one of those movies that like a lot of people were influenced by, and you'll hear that. You know what I mean? It's a classic for sure.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it brings you. Oh my God, is this correct? Reading the budget, it says it was they made it for somewhere between like $80,000 and $140,000.
I believe it. Yeah.
And making back at the box office well over 30 fucking million for that thing.
Well, that's like how Halloween was. Like they had some tiny fucking
budget. They had tiny budgets, and
Halloween had this like dick small budget and made millions of dollars. You know what I mean? So it's just it can happen.
Yeah, dude. And that's one of the magical things about these 70s movies is like they just pop, dude.
Yeah,
like, they really brought horror into the fucking popular limelight, and I think this was one of them that really, like, I think,
of course,
that kind of got people. Like, I mean, you have little bits of very little bits, but you have in like kind of minor influence from sort of real life events that they stretch and pull into these like wild directions. They bring you these iconic characters with Leatherface, who has gone on to be a part of fucking Mortal Kombat games and shit. Right. You know what I mean? Like
he's just as what it's like. People always talk about Robert Englund as Freddy and Kane Hodder and the other people as Jasons, but Gunnar Hansen's Leatherface doesn't get enough love because, dude, he's just like those other characters. He's transcended pop culture, and he's
definitely
been around. There's even a new one coming out. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, dude, that's what I mean. Like, it's they gave you this fucking character, and no matter how like gross or weird or vile the character was, like people wanted to like keep watching and keep like staring at it because it was a spectacle.
It's one of those movies that a lot of people mentioned that it was like hard for them to watch the first time.
Yeah,
but a lot of the really awful stuff like happens off screen. You know what I mean?
Dude,
like
there's like the one shot that always gets me is the
oh man,
the shot where Leatherface dumbs the dude with the hammer, and
it's amazing.
It's so good, and I don't even know how they captured that sound.
He just pops out of the door, and
dude,
fuck.
Yeah, like he pops out of the door, and the sound that that it makes when he fucking hits the dude in the skull with his hammer is just like. It's I'm getting like cringy goosebumps thinking about it, dude. It's my spine's tingling right now. Like
oh,
it's
God, that's a human being.
Dude, it was so good. And then like he just takes the body and slams the door behind him, and
it's amazing. It's so effective.
And then everything your imagination like leads you to what's happening off screen is the fucking dangerous part about that movie.
I think that's part of why I wasn't a huge fan of like the 2000s remake, because it was just like a lot of like in your face gore, where the first one, sure, it was brutal, but like you said, it left a lot to your imagination. Like you'd see the person up on the hook hanging there, but it didn't show you how that person got there. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It gave you brutal moments and gnarly scenes, but it didn't like. That was like the time period too when the remakes came out. They were doing like, everything was trying to be like as brutal as Hostel and stuff.
True,
you know what I mean? And it just
unfortunately,
and you're right though. Like that's you know that this character wears human skin on his face, right?
Mhm.
You know that this character is not a good character. You don't need to see him do every fucked up thing. But I think, yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that, like, you know, I think this movie like found a really good balance with you know, the on-screen and off-screen brutality, and I just think
it's like
that it leads to some really awesome sequels also. In a
totally.
way.
Oh, I love the second one.
Dude,
yeah,
dude, this is the the second one. I follow Chop Top Mosley on fucking Instagram. Man.
Hell yeah,
that
Bill Mosley's awesome,
dude.
Yeah.
Bill Mosley's fucking awesome. But yeah, anyway, like it gives you this world that like you didn't know you wanted to dive into, but you do, because it's fucked up and it's weird, and you're just like, are there these backwoods incestuous like cannibals on the fucking, you know, somewhere down on you know wherever the fuck in the South, like. True.
Yeah, because it had like that, you know, this is a true story thing, you know what I mean, which other horror movies throughout the years went like a Blair Witch. I remember that one was like, people thought it was real, you know what I mean? So it's just cool when a movie can do that.
Oh yeah.
And Tobe Hooper, obviously, went on to, you know, Poltergeist and Funhouse and all these other great movies, but Texas Chainsaw is like his quintessential classic, you know what I mean?
Yeah, the quintessential. Oh man, yeah. Oh man. But yeah, you're right. And he went on to do a lot of other stuff, but this like just fucking, I think, shook people in this way.
Still does.
Yeah. And again, like, you know, I think what's interesting is that it does this weird world building, like so many horror movies do. Like, if I'm thinking about them, like some of my favorite horror movies build their own little, like, you know, universe, like in this way, without even trying, and where you're just like, okay, I want to see like how these characters, like I want to see how bombastic some of these characters can be at times. I want to see how like invulnerable some of these characters can be at times, you know.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. But I think Leatherface is one of those characters, though.
So I want to do a couple more shout outs before I jump into my next choice. So another 1971, Straw Dogs. It's it's one of Dustin Hoffman's earlier movies. It's one of those classic, like, rape happens in the movie, like revenge type movies. They ended up remaking it like so many years back, and it wasn't nearly as good. 1972, one of the most ridiculous horror movies ever made, Frogs.
Frogs.
Also 72, we have Horror Express, which is with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, who were like mainstays of all the decades before, you know what I mean? Last House on the Left, which is Wes Craven's directorial debut, is also in 72.
That
was a good year.
The 70s gave us Wes Craven.
Yeah, definitely. So another couple shout outs real quick. 73, George A. Romero's The Crazies.
Oh, fuck yes, dude.
And then Don't Look Now, which is another great Italian horror movie with Donald Sutherland in it.
I was just going to say, is that the one with Sutherland? Yes.
Yeah. But
that movie's got some spooks, man.
So you just mentioned when you were talking about how you get invested in these characters in this world.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like beginning with in 1979, you know, I thought this was going to be a movie you were going to pick to talk about, but Alien, you know, ends up. Alien is a great movie, but in all the other movies, you're like so invested in like figuring out like who are these people, where did this creature come from? But the first Alien, is just one of the most effective movies, and I think it's, for me, it was one of my, like, I remember seeing Chucky when I was a kid, but I think Alien was my first real I think we talked about this before, like first real introduction into horror. And I think a lot of people were the same way, where they get started on like a sci-fi horror movie first, you know what I mean? But Alien, I remember being a kid and seeing Ridley Scott's Alien and just being so blown away with it and just immersed by it. It is such a beautiful movie.
Oh my God, dude, it is. It's a gorgeous fucking sci-fi movie because it does so many things right. Like, you feel trapped, you feel isolated in space.
Damn, yeah.
Which so many movies in space, especially these days, you don't even like. It's not even a factor sometimes when you're watching a film, or it's like, oh yeah, they're in the vacuum of space. Like this movie, like like you can't escape, and and on top of that, like you have this like this like just the way like the set pieces look, like the way that the ship is designed, the way the alien is designed, the way like it doesn't look like what you know, and so it places you in this completely different future. It's God, dude.
They invested so much time into making everything look fucking phenomenal.
Yes.
From the face hugger eggs to the pilot, which we don't even learn anything about until like decades later, but to the H.R. Geiger's xenomorph, like, oh man,
dude,
god damn.
Yeah, I mean and again, the xenomorph is a fucking iconic like image. It's a character that has like it goes above its medium,
Totally.
And oh god, and it gave Jesus, dude, this movie gave us fucking Ripley, like
no
this,
shit, yeah.
like this like equally, if the alien is an unfucking killable, unstoppable force, like Ripley's that immovable object. You know what
totally.
I mean? Like Ripley, no matter what's so fucking cool about her character is that no matter like she's presented as kind of a badass to begin with, but you get this vibe that like it's just like over the course of the movie she's just like, fuck it, it's me or this thing, and like I'm not gonna fucking go down, like, and that is a real human mentality,
Totally.
And so it really like you feel that, and you feel that like as it's picking off your fucking like people, like that like further isolation in terms of like, oh man, this movie just like does so much for you.
It's amazing. Like, so and I love Aliens too, but they're completely different movies where
totally
Aliens is more of like this action. There's a fuckload of aliens, where this one is totally just this, like you said, isolated. Like there's only one fucking alien, but he's gonna fucking kill you.
Yeah, exactly. You only need one, man. And like
it's so amazing, dude. This movie gives me chills to this day. Like, and obviously, it has another one of those like pop culture. The chest burster scene was one of those things that was like duplicated and replicated and made fun of, and it's still so effective to this day. Like,
dude,
it's amazing.
It's so true. Like the not only does that scene hold the fuck up, like
right.
It oh god, dude, it looks so gnarly, just like popping out. Starts just.
Did you imagine? Yeah,
dude, it just will be in like what's happening internally. That thing's breaking your fucking rib cage out. But anyway, I think my favorite parody of that though to this day is still the Spaceballs one.
The Spaceballs, yeah,
dude, it's just so fucking great. Like, yeah. Hello, my lady. Hello, my honey.
Yeah, and it's the same actor.
Yeah,
it's the same. Yeah, it's great,
dude. It's that and real good point where it's like what they did with that like furtherment of that series and like those characters. They did different types of movies later on, which is interesting, but this one is, I don't think they've ever recaptured like the same feel you get from this first one,
right?
And I don't think that, I don't know if they've ever tried, but rumor has it Ridley Scott has been working on like an Alien, like a short limited series Alien thing that I'm really intrigued by.
I mean, I personally. I enjoyed Prometheus and I enjoyed Alien Covenant. So
I've watched Prometheus twice and I do like it. I can't remember if how I felt about Covenant. I don't remember like forming a very good opinion when I first watched.
That's fair. That's fair.
But I think that it's a world that's worth playing in. You know what I mean? Totally.
Like,
this shit gives you the fucking Wayland Corp. Anyway.
True.
Yeah, it's a really unique one, and I think you're definitely right where like myself and you, like I think a lot of people get their start with that science fiction horror.
Totally.
That is the road to go down if you're gonna start there. But you know, in a kind of different, it's not science fiction necessarily, but I don't know, like religious fiction. Anyway, I have to. We can't talk about the 70s without talking about 1973's The Exorcist.
Of course not.
Which gives you this like wild. It's not like technologically crazy. It's fucking like, it makes you think demons are fucking real. You know what I mean?
Dude,
like, dude, this movie.
It's one of the most effective horror movies of all time.
Oh my god, man! I don't know. I'm not a very religious person, but this movie, like, I remember when I was a kid, and I just like the first time. When I first like really watched this movie, I just like, it had me shook for a second. Where you're just like, man, did they like consult with fucking like the Catholic Church or something? Like, where are these? Like, this seems so. It just feels so raw and real in some of those scenes, and you learn some of the back, like. Again, some of the production on this movie was fucking wild.
Yeah, it's like one of those cursed movies, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. But it gives you these, you know, really fucking out, like, amazing performances. That's the thing that I think I really took away from this movie was, is just like that the actors really, you could tell, just put it in, you know, and I
completely agree.
That's something that you really don't always get with horror movies, I'd say. You know, I think sometimes people try and it becomes good because of that. But I mean, you know, just Linda Blair herself is just like,
it's like a master class of acting. Yeah,
that's what I was gonna say. Like, you know, people want to talk about Macaulay Culkin being a really great child actor. I'm not knocking him, but Linda Blair in The Exorcist is like far and above. Like, there, I just don't know where she channeled all this, you know what I mean?
Good point.
It's just fucking raw. But yeah, there's, you know, all sorts of like gnarly scenes where, you know, like whether it's like the pissing in the fucking living room scene, which is just like uncomfortable as hell. Totally. Where you're just like, oh, what? Like, obviously there's something going on here. to you know, the fucking like the classic vomiting scene, which is kind of like a you know, has become kind of a parody. I'd say though, there's a lot of things in this movie that have been, you know, well, there's a lot of things in this movie that like have been either parodied or have been kind of redone in a lot of ways. Like this, this set a real good, I think, baseline for like exorcism movies in the future, you know? Because
it also has that like another one of the like reoccurring theme is an iconic shot of the priest getting to the house and just that shot of him looking up at the house, which has been done to death since then. But
it has, but it's never as effective as in this movie, man. The silhouette, like that silhouette shot of him, is like haunting, man. And it's again, it's just like you can take a still frame of that and show that to almost anybody, and they'll probably fucking tell you that that's from The Exorcist. So,
I need to make a little confession here: is that I'm not one of those people that I like this movie, but it's not one of my like all-time favorites. Which, but also, I never really found it scary. Having said that, I can understand why this movie like freaked so many people out and why so many people consider it the scariest horror movie ever made. Like, I can understand that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I'd put it up as like the scariest movie ever made. You know, I think that's just a lie. But you're right. Like, there are people that are like die hard on it. And though I love this movie, it's
I mean, it's a great movie.
Yeah, for sure. But it's like it's not like, I don't know. It gives you the creeps, and like most like exorcism type movies, it gives me the creeps because of like the I don't know, the potential like realness of the totally of like, whoa, dude, like you know, there's all these people out there that tell you that demons are real and all this shit, and so, you know, just like the idea that could be in an effect, and when it's an effective story like this, it really hits you. But but you know, like a lot of like the scares and stuff in this movie aren't really like super I don't know, they're not super scary, like they're jump scares, you know, but it's like I said, I think it's like the performance and like the way they made like the room where they do the exorcism. It becomes like almost this character itself, where it's like it you know, pulses and there's, you know, things that
there's amazing, you know, effects and everything in this movie. Are you a fan of exorcism movies in general, or are they just kind of weak sauce? No, I wouldn't say that, because I did enjoy the first two Conjurings. Like, I guess it's just not my favorite. You know what I mean?
For sure.
But like I said, I could understand why this people like freaked out so many people, especially being young and seeing it. Like, I think a lot of people, the reason it freaks them out is because they are religious, or they would be like what if this happened to my kid? Like, that would be fucking frightening.
Yeah, I bet like watching that as a parent would be a little different. Like, you'd feel that like pull of like, yeah, exactly, like what's happening to my fucking child, you know? It does
have one of my favorite like scenes in horror though, where near the end, where Father Merrick, you know, casts the demon out and it goes into his body, and he jumps out the window and goes down the stairs. Like, that's such a fucking amazing shot.
Yeah, again, I'm getting these like weird weeby jeebies from it, man. Like, it's just such a powerful fucking like
totally
you know, way to end that. But I just, what's weird about this movie, and maybe this is just a thing like they've always done, you know, but what's weird about this movie is that they didn't leave it alone. You know what I mean? Like, this movie was a perfectly great standalone movie.
True.
Then they tried to like build on the characters in this movie. Whereas like okay, with Alien, it totally great world to build on. You know what I mean? This movie, like, you don't need more of it.
No.
It's an effective fucking piece, you know?
I agree. I completely agree.
But like, I think that was like, I think it was just because of the you know, like, you see like the you know, the popularity of the first ones, and then obviously they try and cherry pick things, and I don't know, it just, but this movie, like, I think you're spot on where you're like, it connects with a lot of people because they're religious, you know, and you have that always that kind of question, like,
right,
could this happen?
So it's true. Another couple quick shout outs here. So another 1973, we got the Wicker Man, which is, you know,
dude, I love that fucking movie.
It's just, it's like, I love movies about cults, and so it's just like, you know. Yeah. We got in 1975, we have, you know, one of the biggest movies of the year that we're not talking about, in Jaws, which, you know, went on to make Steven Spielberg kind of like a made man, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I feel like we didn't, like, Jaws, just to be clear, I feel like we didn't need to like talk in depth about it, because the world knows Jaws. But that being said, dude, you're right. Like, that movie like literally scared people out of water. Like, you know what I mean? So you can't forget that. That movie made people afraid of sharks to this fucking day. Like, so yeah.
So you just mentioned something that's going to segue into my next pick, how we didn't need to talk about it. And although we didn't need to talk about Halloween, we're going to talk about it. Because
yeah, you're right. Like, we can't not talk about it, dude. In terms of, you know, 70s.
You just have to. You have to. Because it's just one of those movies that, like we mentioned, paved the way for everything that like it wasn't the first slasher, but it damn sure was the first movie where people were like, holy shit, we can fucking copy this, do something like this, and just take it to the bank. And that's what people did. That's like how, that's literally how Friday the 13th started. You know what I mean? Was how can we rip this movie off? Because I mentioned earlier, like this, I think the budget was like 300,000 to 325,000. They made like 60, 70 million. Like, That's insane.
Yeah, that's fucking nuts.
And it's still like, obviously we just got Halloween Kills.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's still going strong. I don't think, and I know John Carpenter's even said that he had no intention when he made this movie that it was going to turn into the juggernaut that it turned into. Like, he just, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't ever think that, I don't think he ever let it dominate his career, but he didn't, I don't think he ever expected it to be that, like, the spotlight,
It is such a, it's easily one of those movies that if people are like, what's a good horror movie to watch? Like, it always comes to mind. Like, it might sound cliche, but it's just such a classic, and it's still such a fantastic, effective movie.
Yeah, dude. I watch Halloween way too much, like in terms of like other horror movies, I guess. Like, it's one of those that, like you said, it's one of those you can just like kind of turn to. It's gonna be an enjoyable like experience either way. But yeah, dude, like you're right. Like, I mean, this movie came off of Carpenter. Like, what Carpenter do right before it? It was like, what was that cop movie Carpenter did? It was Assault on Precinct 13.
Precinct 13.
Like that. That's the movie he did right before this movie, I believe. Which is like such a wild thing to think, because
it? I mean, you should look that up real quick.
He did that in.
Yeah, you're right. I think he did a sci-fi like movie. And
there's like one that. What was the name of that sci-fi movie? Because it was like it wasn't.
I think Star was in the. Yeah, it was like he did a sci-fi movie, then he did Assault on Precinct 13, and then
Yeah, but like it's just like to dive into the slasher movie is just like it was just so wild, like, and again, creating the Michael Myers character, like there's just no way of telling that's gonna become the icon that it is, even though like in the moment it probably felt like they were just making like a low budget horror movie as best as they could, Oh god, dude, to be on that set, like, I would have loved that. That would be a fun production to be a part of, probably.
Well, because they always talk about they always talk about how small their budget was that's like how The Mask was made, which is a story that everyone's heard, but it's just so great to think, like, it would have been cool to be a fly on the wall for that, to see. I don't know, it's such a great movie. There's so many iconic shots, and one of the coolest things about it too is that it doesn't rely heavily on blood or gore. You know what I mean?
That was always something I loved about that movie. Like you can give some, and like as horror's gone on, I think people have craved a little blood. But like with this movie, you didn't need it. Like, the scare came from knowing Michael Myers was fucking out there. Like,
yeah, and he's gonna kill you.
Yeah, you just knew he was gonna fucking. If he got you, if he got his hands on you, you were fucking dead. You didn't need to see the slash, and that was the thing that I think was the most distasteful thing that Rob Zombie did when he remade them, was that you knew Rob Zombie was gonna put gore in it, but you didn't. You didn't need like a shit ton.
Fair.
Yeah,
anyway, I know what you're saying.
This also gave us a really great Donald Pleasance character.
Of course, like, but she just goes on to like get even nuttier and nuttier with it as it goes on.
Dr. Loomis, arguably the craziest character in the series.
Yeah, especially in like 4 and 5, he's just ridiculous. But yeah, I don't think that they had an idea that it would still like go on. You know what I mean? Like, it's just crazy to me.
Yeah.
And like I said, and it became one of those movies that was just so ripped off. And if it wasn't for Halloween, I don't know where 80s horror would have been. Dude, it's crazy to think about.
Yeah. This was I think just again probably the prime example of like the influence that the 70s had. Was right here. It's just, you're right. Like, I think you mentioned it before. There's just been so many that just have directly come from. You can just trace that line. From Halloween to that whatever movie. But yeah, this. I just love this. Like, I love the simplicity of so much of this movie while being so fucking effective.
Yeah.
Yeah,
totally.
and we also got a shout out. We shout out John Carpenter. We got a shout out Deborah Hill for being there.
Totally.
Just Deborah Hill. That was the award winning fucking team back then, dude.
And the Accods. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. And the Accods. Dude, real quick, before I get to another one of my picks, I just want to shout out. We talked about it. I was originally going to talk about it, but in rewatching it, I want Rabid by David Cronenberg. Kind of, it's a really great it's a great shout out because it brings some elements of what you see from the future from Cronenberg, but you don't really get like a real full on like.
I just missed like the last few things you said. Sorry. God damn it.
No, you're good. I was just saying, when shouting out Rabid by David Cronenberg.
Okay.
I wanted to touch on like it's an interesting movie because you get some like kind of gnarly visuals. There's one scene where this surgeon's like peeling some skin off of like a thigh, and that's probably the most cringeworthy scene in the whole movie because it's like the slow thing, and Cronenberg doesn't like pull away from it, and but it's not really like, it's just interesting. Like the reason it turned into a shout out was because it kind of became like noticeable that this just wasn't like, he develops as a storyteller so much in later decades, and this just kind of like had this, like you could tell he was trying to replicate almost like Italian style horror movie directing, like that giallo kind of style. Especially because at the beginning of the movie there's a huge motorcycle ride. So, it's like the opening credits, two people riding on the motorcycle.
Well, I think the same thing can be said about Shivers, another movie of his that came out in 75. Yeah, you can see the like groundwork for what came later.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because I completely see what you're saying.
Like, I guarantee you that I'm going to be talking about the Fly later on. But
of course.
but shouting out Rabid, it was just sort of like, it had some interesting moments. It's a really weird movie though, where it's like you're kind of confused as to whether or not the characters are zombies or like this lady has like a stinger that like stings people from her chest and like turns them into things that like I don't know.
I will say it was creative and unique.
It was unique.
Have you seen his son Brandon Cronenberg has this great movie called Possessor? Have you seen it yet?
I have not.
Oh man, go watch it. It's fantastic.
Damn, Possessor. Okay.
Possessor. Yeah. So another quick couple, or what were we gonna say?
What you got? You got some shout outs?
Yeah, a couple more shout outs here. I like doing shout outs. So 1977, The Hills Have Eyes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude.
It's a great movie.
Another Craven.
Yeah, another Craven. 1978, another Donald Sutherland, in which is one of the like iconic movies too. Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Ooh,
like such a great plot.
Dude, that
such
movie,
a good concept.
That movie will forever make people paranoid. You know
totally,
what I mean?
Totally. But yeah, I just want to do another couple shout outs before jumping into my next pick, and this is one of my all-time favorite horror movies. I talked about it before, but Richard Donner's 1976 seminal horror classic, The Omen. Like, holy shit, dude! This movie, it's still one of those movies where when I watch it today, it's just as unsettling and creepy and effective as it was when I saw it when I was a kid. Like, it is such a oh man.
What makes it like what really hits that note for you though about
just it's just I love the idea of, is this person evil or not, or and it's just all these awful evil things that are going around this person that are controlled by someone, like just that idea, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not only that, but it's just that's such a creepy idea. Like, is your kid fucking say like the devil?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Is your kid the fucking devil? Yeah,
because and I remember it was one of those movies where the first couple times I saw it in bits and pieces, And then I finally saw the whole thing and was just like, holy fucking shit. This movie does it for me.
Yeah.
It's, you know,
unsettling is a fucking fantastic word for it.
Gregory Peck nails in an all-time performance. I don't know the kid's name, but just the way the kid looks is fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, he does a great job too. Talking about like kid actors.
The fucking Damien, man, forever.
Yeah. Damien's
after this movie,
amazing.
Damien was like a unfortunate name for a child, I imagine.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Like that kid, I just looked it up. It's Harvey Stevens. Don't know if that cat ever acted again, but like, where did that performance come from that fucking child?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, just like, what'd they tell him to do? You know, be as sinister as possible, but
yeah, how do you
don't look like it.
Dude, it was almost like the kid really was
dude, that's
possessed.
What that's what I'm saying. Like when I've experienced this movie, like you get wrapped up in that. Like you could just as easily convince yourself that this kid is a fucking devil. Like,
yeah.
You know? Oh my god, dude.
He's just so menacing throughout the movie, and just It also has it has one of the most unsettling, we just overuse that word, but it has one of the most disturbing sequences of all time, which, I mean, I don't even need to say the sequence that people will know what I'm talking about, but the birthday sequence with the fucking housemaid, like, holy shit, dude. That scene as a kid fucked with me.
Dude, I mean, in the, you know, like those words will never die. It's all for you.
It's amazing.
It's
amazing.
Fucking creepy and disturbing. Yeah, dude. Oh my god.
It's all for you. Oh my. And
then just the tautness of the rope when she hits. You know, just like, it's one of those moments. Like, I mean, you see, like, you don't even need to see the moment necessarily. You know, like, but. Oh my god, it just fucking it does get you. Yeah. I mean, just thinking about it again, like, we've had so many moments while talking about these movies that I've literally gotten goosebumps again. Goosebumps. This is one of them, dude. But
and then this movie also has one of my all-time favorite death scenes. And even so much as sometimes I'll go on YouTube just to look it up, which sounds fucking terrible, but the plate glass window beheading scene is still to this day one of the most gruesome fucking beheading scenes you'll ever see, dude. It's amazing,
dude. Yeah, this movie, I mean, honestly, I'd like this movie also gave like a lot of really good kind of groundwork for later stuff, you know, like.
Totally.
Like, I mean, not only is it a Richard Donner piece, which is that dude went on to do obviously like Superman and stuff, which is wild, but you know, like it really gives you like that note, like, I think you mentioned it earlier, where it's just like it gives you that like parent-child paranoia, and like it's played on so much later on down the road too. Totally.
But none of them are as good as this movie. Like, you don't need to watch. Like, go watch this movie. Like, if you've never seen The Omen, like, it's gonna fuck with you.
Yeah, make sure it's on your fucking on your next horror movie list. Like,
totally,
dude.
I might go rewatch it soon too. I
was just thinking about that, dude. I was like, I'm gonna fucking watch it sometime this week. Probably.
It's just, it's fantastic. Man. Richard Donner could have never made another movie, and I think that movie alone would have been, people would still be talking about it and still talking about him.
Oh yeah. Yeah, dude, this movie just gets you. It's fucking ridiculous. Let's see. Oh, I got a couple more shout outs before my next one. Sure. I wanted to shout, it's not necessarily a full-on horror movie. I'd say it's more of like a science fiction musical, but it has the word horror in its title, so I wanted to shout it out. So, Rocky Horror Picture Show, it deals with, like, you know, kind of like that Frankenstein-esque storyline in a way. You deal with aliens and stuff, so it doesn't really give you any spooks, but it was it came out in 1975, and it really gives you this like, it's a great like Halloween vibe. Okay, I'm just gonna throw that out there. No more need to talk about it, but shout out to Deserve.
I'm gonna say something here that might be I might face some backlash for. Believe it or not, I have never fucking watched that movie.
Oh, dude, Rocky Horror? Rocky Horror, it's great, man.
I know it's got like one of the largest, if not the largest, like cult followings where people,
oh god, yeah,
I'll have a screening of it and they'll all dress up and this, that, and the next thing. I've honestly never seen it, which is crazy.
Dude, it's just like I said, it's not really like a fucking scare. It's just a good time. It's just you see some fun performances. Tim Curry obviously nails it out of and it's just it's just a fun energy to it. But yeah, like I said, my favorite Tim Curry will always be Pennywise. Oh, of course, man. Though that is a character the world will never shake. Tim Curry's iconic Pennywise the Clown, man.
All right, so what's the last one that was your
I want to talk about Dawn of the Dead. Dawn of the Dead,
rightfully so,
is I'm gonna say that it's probably my favorite zombie movie. And we mentioned that, like, the previous decades you get plenty of horror. One of them is 1968's Night of the Living Dead, which
classic
gave us Romero's iconic zombie, and this
is still being fuck, if it wasn't for that movie, man, like, yeah,
dude, if it wasn't for that movie, we wouldn't, anybody who ever watched an episode of Walking Dead wouldn't have a fucking
it's just crazy to me that the zombie genre is still as popular. You know what I mean? It's just,
I mean, they've definitely. I'm gonna say this they've bastardized the zombie in a lot of ways. I saw this show. It was about a zombie detective who so somehow stupid. She's reanimated and
it's so dumb. Yeah,
it's
so dumb.
It's like that kind of crap. It's like that's the Twilight of fucking zombie movies kind of shit. But jumping from Night of the Living Dead in 68 to almost 10 years later, doing Dawn of the Dead.
I forget what the reason why, but I remember there's a reason why he waited so long to come back to that.
Oh man,
but I think he didn't want to be pigeonholed into this is what I do type of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, which is funny because that's kind of what ended up happening, unfortunately, for him. I mean, Romero contributed a lot to pop culture. Well, I'm not going to discredit him there, but yeah, I love. When we were talking about Suspiria, we were talking about the visual aspect of that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it really has this aesthetic about it. Dawn of the Dead really captures this great kind of visual aesthetic also. I love the brightness of the fucking blood splatter.
What I
mean? It reminds me of Argento.
It's interesting you say that because he actually worked on this movie and there's he has his own in post-production they each made their own version. So
what?
he made a version that went to Italian crowds and it has more music by Goblin, and then there's Romero's version, and so
my mind's being blown
because that's why they in Italian they went on to make Zombie and Zombie 2, you know what I mean? There were continuations of, I believe, of this, but yeah,
dude.
But Romero, we're talking about Romero, you know what I mean?
That's awesome.
That's why you get those vibes from that movie.
Yeah, that's fucking epic. I mean, I love it, and just the idea of being, I love the setting of it for the just being in that mall. You've tried to barricade yourself in, for the most part. At the beginning of the movie, you gather your pieces, and everybody kind of ends up at the you know, the mall. But it's I don't know. I always loved that concept of like, you know, like I always joke about like, okay, you know, something happens, go take over a fucking Costco. Like, well, you know, like go take over a fucking mall, man. And that's something that you see later on so much too.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, because this whole like zombie mall setting was recreated in a whole bunch of other things, including video games, like in Left 4 Dead. In Left 4 Dead, I think it's the second one. One of the levels is a mall. Also, I forget it's another zombie game. I think it might be Dead Rising. I could be wrong here. Hopefully someone will correct me, but you're all one of the games, like you start out in a mall. So it's like definitely, you know, people have gone on to pay homages to that.
Yeah, definitely, dude. And you know, like they continue with the classic zombie in this movie. Like they're kind of like, you know, the slow, unstoppable kind of zombie where it just, you know, if sheer volume overwhelms you, you're fucked. Like, but you can probably outrun it if you know. True. But there's, I don't know. I there's just so, like, this is one of those movies that I can rewatch so often. You know, I go down to fucking Rainy Day Records and check it out of their little video library.
That's cool. That's amazing.
You know?
I wonder if there's something like that here in Spokane.
Yeah.
Two of my favorite things about this movie are, and part of the reason why the movie's so good, is Tom Savini's special effects.
Oh, dude, Savini is a god, and like you see so much come from him in this movie. Oh yeah, good point, man.
And then my second favorite thing, and he's someone we haven't talked about in a while, and whenever I talk about him, I always joke about being the dad from Kenan and Kel. But Ken Foray's in this movie, and he's great. He
is, like, in terms of like the actors, like I think he's the fucking highlight for sure. The Kenan and Kel dad. Oh my god, yeah. This movie just, like, us, you know, the setting, the visual aesthetic, the soundtrack to this movie, it all just culminates into, I don't know, just this, like, it's not like a horror experience fully, you know what I mean? Like, you feel kind of trapped, but I don't know, it's just a fucking awesome ride, this movie. And
totally.
Totally. I think it's interesting, you know, that they tried to, like, you know, they tried to keep this sort of, you know, movie series alive a little bit. It goes fucking wild. Then, you know, and
right.
then they do some remakes in the 2000s that were, you know, they're all right. They're just, you know, I think what they miss is that there's not, you know, you don't have the practical effects of Savini. You don't have like the charm of the soundtracks, and I don't know.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, there's something magical about these 70s movies, man. They really have, they really lean on, like, on not just like I don't know. They lean on so much, and I think a lot of that had to do with being forced to do practical effects back in the
Totally. Which we've mentioned before is just the best.
Yeah, practical effects are bust, man.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah, love it. And honestly, like, yeah, George Romero, he became, even though he may have not wanted to get pigeonholed at first, like, there's no way you can talk about zombies without talking about George Romero now, and I think that's a fucking awesome.
Yeah,
like,
it's not a bad thing.
That's an incredible thing, you know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah,
totally.
Rest in peace to Romero, man.
Well, because when people,
or maybe he'll come back.
There's even like there's even like people talk about types of zombies, and then they mention that's a Romero type of zombie, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Helm to that, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
I get what you're saying. It's a fun watch. Yeah, it definitely has some gruesome effects, some awesome kills. You know what I mean? So before we jump into my last, it's a 1979 movie, so I'm going to finish off my shout outs with a couple more. Amityville Horror.
Oh, yes.
Is another one of those that's like potentially based on a true story type of things. And it's a great movie. Another, probably one of my favorite Cronenberg movies came out in 1979, The Brood.
The Brood.
Which, if people have never seen it, go see it. It's just, ugh. It's a gross movie, but it's a great movie. Also in 79 we have, what's that?
I was just gonna say that became Cronenberg's MO after a while. Gross but great.
Right. Two more shout outs, both in 79 as well. When a Stranger Calls, which is one of the creepiest premises and has one of the greatest like opening sequences of a movie. Just that concept, you know what I mean? I like movies that are based off of urban legends, you know what I mean?
Yeah, dude. It gives you that same like almost like that, like we were talking about with, you know, during the Exorcist thing, where it's like you don't, you know, urban legends are one of those things you're like, could it be real? You know? Yeah,
of course it could. Someone could sneak into your house, you know what I mean? It's just a creepy concept.
Yeah,
I think for me the most, like, I love horror, but home invasion always is so fucked up to me because it could happen to anybody at any time, and I don't like thinking that.
No. Yeah.
Last shout out is an over the top fucking movie, Tourist Trap. It's just so. Have you never seen it?
No. What's that? What the fuck is Tourist Trap?
Oh my god, dude! It's oh my god, dude. Explaining it would not do it. It has one of the most ridiculous killers and costumes, and it's just it's just basically like these teens happen across this like tourist attraction in this like old rundown town, and you get these creepy characters and this guy that's like obsessed with dolls. It's like making dolls. It's awesome movie, dude.
Sounds fucking epic. I'm gonna have to watch that fucker.
You're gonna have to. But
Tourist Trap. Okay.
Tourist Trap. It's amazing. But another amazing 1979 horror movie that actually went on to have multiple sequels. But the first one I think is the best. Is Phantasm.
Oh, dude.
And this is another one of those movies that has like a gigantic cult following, and I understand why.
Yeah, man. Well, Phantasm, I discovered Phantasm late, you know.
Same.
Like, I had always seen it on lists, but I never had like gotten my hands on a copy or had the ability to watch it. It was never like on TV circulating, you know. And so. But yeah, dude, like you have, what's like just the tall man, right? Like,
oh my god,
that's the character's name, right? Like, that dude became a fucking icon, also, man. Like, what? Yeah, but okay, so the Phantasm it takes place most like it's centered around mortuary, correct?
Yeah. It's just it's one of those movies that I think one of the reasons I like it so much is that. I've mentioned this before about movies too, is it doesn't slap you in the face with trying to over-explain everything. This movie leaves a lot up to you to decipher. Like, it doesn't explain at all really who the tall man is or where he came from or how he has these powers or where the spheres come from. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I
just think it's great in that way where it doesn't explain it a lot, and it makes it even more creepy.
Yeah. Well, it's something I think that modern movies don't do enough of is they leave you that mystery, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think back then movie makers were like relying on, you know, people to sort of have that like imagination to sort of branch off and be like, okay, now I'm going to go home and think about like, where did he come from? Like,
totally.
You know? Like,
so this movie just has the way it's filmed, the cinematography, like it's almost this like dream like, quality to it, but it's another one of those movies too. When they were making it, I don't think that they realized that it was going to be as what's the word I'm looking for? I don't think they had because like I said, it spawned so many sequels and it has such a big cult following, and all the sequels are great, are in their own right good too. But I don't think they expected that because it's just one of those small budget. Like I never really heard of the director. Don Coscarelli before, but he did make, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Beastmaster. He made Beastmaster. But Phantasm is definitely one of
Beastmaster.
Phantasm's like a cult horror movie where not everyone has seen it, but I would recommend you go see it because like I said, there's like the tall man is great. His little like dwarf zombies that also don't get explained are great. And then the first time you see that fucking sphere fly through the air, the spikes pop out, go into someone's fucking forehead, and the blood spurt out is such an amazing visual.
It's fucking awesome.
It's beautiful.
Dude, yeah.
It's
so
great.
Fucking awesome. And okay, dude, I had to call back to you. You mentioned that this movie kind of almost has this like dreamlike state sort of look to it at times. I fucking loved that aesthetic about this movie when I watch it. You know, it's because it is like you don't, especially like, you know, following the main character a little, you don't know sometimes if like what's the imagination and what's not. You know?
Totally.
And so it really was fucking cool that they did some of those scenes in that way where you're sort of like, you know, it's discombobulating almost. You know?
It is.
But yeah, good. Yeah, Phantasm. Was there just the 2 sequels to it?
No, they ended up being like I think there's 5 of them. I think they ended up making a fifth one a couple years ago. Pretty sure there's 5 of them. The second and third one are really good. There's a sequence in the second one where like they go to this rundown town and it's this kid that lives in this house by himself. It has it all booby trapped. That is an amazing sequence. Like, and I think it's cool that the same act, like the guy that plays Reggie, like was in. Yeah. I think he's in all of the sequels.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and he's fantastic as that character. It's just like I said, it's one of those movies that a lot like kind of like Puppet Master is another one where, you know, the sequels have their waning quality, but the first Puppet Master is so fucking amazing. It's one of those that has another cult following, and it's a great movie, a great idea.
Yeah.
Dolls are fucking creepy. Like we'll talk about that movie at some point too, but
dolls are forever creepy. I'm just gonna say.
Yeah, they will always be forever creepy.
Also, I just have to point out the dude that plays the tall man. I just looked him up. His name is Angus Scrim.
Angus Scrim, yeah.
Fucking epic. Fucking epic. And honestly, shout outs to that dude for really creating that iconic performance. So.
He's great. He's just so menacing the way, like.
Yeah. Oh.
It's awesome.
Just like, because I mean, anytime you see his presence, it's just like this looming fucking figure, you know,
just like barreling towards you, like it'd be frightening.
Yeah, like what the fuck?
And it's in a fucking and it's in a mausoleum, like it's a great.
It's a great setting. It's a really great setting, and a really, again, like some like, just performances that knocked it out of the park. Oh no.
It really was. And I think it like helped transition into the 80s, which were like, obviously we've talked about 80s, like the slasher boom, like 80s is when horror took off, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. But again though, that wouldn't have happened with the fucking groundwork that we see in the 70s decade, man.
That's true.
Like,
that's true.
You know, like I wonder, you know, like yeah, I wonder if where Wes Craven, like, you know, like how I want to look into where he really got his start, because you know we talked about like Last House on the Left being his first movie and stuff. You know, did he just like pop out of nowhere with that script? Like, I don't know. But this decade gave us some really great like starts, some really great like baseline like kind of things that get replicated, as well as like the introduction to like actors and directors and stuff that we see in the future, which is fucking rad, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this was like you mentioned, I think this is a good, like at the beginning of the podcast, this is a good place to kind of start modern horror if you're getting into horror at all, you know what I mean? But, gosh, yeah, totally. Just some like, I mean, and we mentioned a handful of movies on this episode that you should definitely watch or you should definitely have watched, I'll say. Yeah. But also there's tons, man. There's tons.
Our apologies if we left some out, you know what I mean? Like we're not gonna
cover everything. Yeah, everybody's fancy, but
it'd be like a 6-hour podcast. Yeah.
But you know, we just like, I think this is a good taste of what did come from that decade, and it gives you and myself like some other stuff to like, you know, continue to
go back and watch. Yeah,
hell yeah, man.
Totally.
But yeah, epic episode 30 if you ask me though, man. Like this is like I think this will be a fun kind of, benchmark every now and then. Like you said, we'll do some genre roundup, or we'll talk about something else specific. And
I got some ideas written down that we'll have to talk about.
Hell yeah.
I'm just looking forward to the future of this. So yeah.
Hell yeah, because the podding doesn't stop.
Nope.
All right. Well, we'll leave this here for episode 30, hot dogs or corn dogs, preferably.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta establish the difference. But yeah, we'll be hot back on the heels with an episode 31. I promise. All right, David, you got any last thoughts on the?
I do not.
All right. Well, then we'll just say goodnight, hot or dogs, whatever you are. Just dogs.